What happens to a family when someone suddenly dies and there is unforgiveness? This is Lisa's story.
But one day something went horribly wrong in the polo field. My dad clutched his chest. He fell off his polo pony. And of course, it was chaos there at the polo fields that day. I had a half sister. She was there. And my mom, they called the ambulance. My mom jumped into the ambulance. And my dad did not make it to the hospital. He died of a heart attack at the age of 39. And 2 months later, I was born.
Sadly, her mother did not recover. She covered her pain with medications for depression, which later Lisa found out caused brain damage. Her mother began to drink heavily, but then gave that up.
My half-sister didn't recover from that day. Years later, I tried to, she lived in Pennsylvania, and I tried to establish a relationship with her, and she said it took years of counseling to overcome the events of that day. I cannot share memories of my father with you. And I tried to plead with her. I said, we don't even have to talk about him. But she didn't want to have a relationship. And so many years later, at the age of 68, she passed away. And so it was a tough life for me. My mom, I can remember the liquor store used to deliver vodka and 7-Up to my mom every day. And so my life was a lot like the movie Groundhog Day. I don't know if you remember that, but Bill Murray was a weatherman, and he was covering February 2nd, the Groundhog Day, when the groundhog comes out and he looks to see if his shadow is there. Anyway, and so, but he kept doing the same process over and over and over again in the movie, and that was what my day was like. I see my mom as I went off to school. She was sitting in the same chair, smoking the same cigarette, drinking the same drink, and really looking at me with the same blank stare. And then I can remember coming home from school, and there she was. It was like she never moved, sitting in that chair, drinking that drink, and smoking that cigarette. I remember at age 8, I literally took my dolls and I put them away, and I said, I've got to be the adult now. And my mom became my biggest fear, Nancy. I feared being anything like her. It was a fear that drove me most of my adult years. But I was actually going down the same path as her when I was a freshman in high school. A friend of mine, her name is Leslie. There's 5 minutes left to go in the class, and the teacher said, I'm done with my lesson, so you can talk if you want. So Leslie turned around and she said, Lisa, would you like to pray a prayer to receive Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior? And I really hadn't grown up in the church. My dad was Jewish, but it didn't matter. I mean, we didn't grow up with any of that. And so I was thinking, why not? It's got to be better than what I'm dealing with now. And so I prayed this prayer. And Leslie and her family didn't stop at that. They began to pick me up. By high school, we were in an apartment. And they used to pick me up at the apartment and take me to church with them. And I spent all day with them every Sunday. It was so much fun. And I loved watching Leslie's mom and her family because I was so starving for a normal environment to understand what a normal family looked like. But that really made my mom look all the worse. And so when I left in high school for college, I actually was able to go to college because of a generous aunt. I went to college and I was not turning back. I was going to make something of myself so that I would never end up like my mother. And so I ended up pursuing this crazy career, sportscasting for women. At the time was not even done, but I decided that that's what I wanted to do. There were only a couple of people in it. And there were Miss Americas, and I was not a Miss America, but I thought I knew a lot about sports. I played college basketball and I played sports in high school. And so I decided to go after it. And so I did. And I had some success. I ended up on national television on HBO Sports, and I was in New York City, the top market in the country. I also worked in my hometown of San Antonio, where my mother was, but I didn't have anything to do with her the first time around. But I made it to this national platform, and I did that for a few years. But then the bottom dropped out of my life when I wasn't renewed on my HBO contract, nor was I renewed on my MSG contract in the same week. So I plummeted. I don't know if anybody listening today has ever lost their livelihood in their career, but it's not easy, especially when your income really helps your family. And so I went from 6 figures to 0 overnight. And I was lost. I blame God for it, even though I hadn't been following him since those high school years when Leslie took me to church. And why would you take my livelihood away from me? And he didn't answer. I don't think he liked my tone. And so there were a lot of things that happened. My husband said, we cannot afford our home in New Rochelle in Westchester County anymore. We have got to move out where it's less expensive. So we had to, I just didn't want to go. I love New York. I was across from the Macy's in my workplace, and, I was at Madison Square Garden. I love the shows. I love you're from New Jersey. You probably understand this. I mean, I loved everything about New York City.
It's the greatest place. It's the greatest place.
Yes. I was born to be in New York City is what I thought. So I ended up moving to Connecticut. I didn't win that one. And in that time, I was really lost. I didn't know if I'd ever work again in my field. And so I joined a church. I went back to that foundation that had been laid in high school. And I remember a woman just reaching out to me and putting her arm around me and saying, honey, we're just so glad you're here. We would love for you to join our Young Moms Bible Study. I had a small child, and they have childcare. I know you'd like these ladies. And so I thought, well, I got nothing but time. Why not do Bible study? So I did for the first time. Even though I went to church in high school, I really didn't do Bible study. So this is the first time I had ever done Bible study. And in that Bible study, I began to learn about Jesus, and I began to learn more about my faith, and I began to pray. And I began to develop a relationship. That's a very important word. I prayed the prayer to receive Jesus, but I did not have a relationship with him. And it was until I started to have a relationship with him there was fruit. We don't have fruit when we just pray the prayer and go on about our lives just like they were before. Mm-hmm. So it was in that time, about 6 months of doing Bible study, that God finally answered my questions. Why would you take my livelihood away from me? Why would you take my career away from me? And he said to me, Lisa, I gave you a national platform to glorify me, and you did not do it. I had to take it away from you to get your attention. God sometimes disciplines us. The Bible says he disciplines those he loves. So I'm so thankful for that discipline, honestly, because it turned me right around. I repented. It's a turnaround from the old ways. And I said, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry that I wasted all these years. If you give me another opportunity, not only will I give you my career, I'll give you my life. So that day I did what they call surrender. I surrendered my entire life, my thoughts, my actions, what I do to God. And 1 week later, I kid you not, I had a call from my agent who said, hey, Lisa, ESPN, which by the way was my career goal, wants you to do some freelance reporting for them. Do you want to do it? And so I said, let me pray about this. No, I said yes right away. I thought that, I really did. Immediately thought it was an answer from God, from my loving God who gave me another opportunity. So I began working for ESPN. And my goal was to be a sports center anchor. That was always my career goal, but I was reporting. I was just doing some freelance reporting for them. And so then I got an offer from my old station in San Antonio. They'd heard that I had not been renewed in my contracts. And so the old Lisa would have never considered going back, really. It was a step backwards to go back to San Antonio, even though it was a great market. I love working there. I love covering the San Antonio Spurs and the Dallas Cowboys and all that. But I really, my goal was to be on ESPN. And here I was. I was, knocking on the door of SportsCenter. So what came to me is if ESPN would offer me an anchor position, it was my sign to stay. If they didn't, it'd be my sign to go. I was willing to go where God wanted me to go. And so sure enough, I got called into the executive producer's office, and he said, Lisa, I'm sorry, but we cannot offer you a SportsCenter anchoring position at this time, but we can offer you a full-time reporting position here at ESPN. And I think I'm the first person to ever turn down full-time reporting at ESPN. I just knew what I had to do. And I looked him square in the eyes and I said, I'm sorry, I've got to turn you down and go back to San Antonio. And Nancy, San Antonio was not just about going back home. It wasn't about, that year was a very big year. They promoted the heck out of me. I was on every promotion that they did. And I went to the Super Bowl with the Dallas Cowboys. I covered every Dallas Cowboys game, home and away. They sent me to Lillehammer, Norway for the Winter Olympics, and it was Lisa in Lillehammer. And I also covered the Spurs in the playoffs.
Wow.
Yeah, it was an amazing kind of year with a lot of opportunities.
That's
but
like
it wasn't about
come
any
true,
of that,
right? That's a dream come
yeah,
true.
it was. It was just like I was golden down there for a while. And so, but it wasn't about that. God had a plan, and his plan was for me to finally honor my mother after so many years of running from being anything like her, running from a relationship with her. Because the Bible says, honor your father and mother. It doesn't say if they're good mothers and fathers. It doesn't say if they're attentive mothers and fathers, or if they've been nice to you, or if they've provided for your needs. It just says, honor your father and your mother. Mm-hmm. And for me, honoring my mom meant visiting her regularly. By that time, she was in a group home. She couldn't handle her meds. She'd get off her medication. And for those who've had family members with mental illness, sometimes if you get off the medication, things happen. And so that's what happened with her. And so she had to have somebody that would regulate the medication. And then I also took her grandson, my oldest, Kyle, was 4 by that time. So I would take him to see his grandmother. And if she had any needs, I would provide for her needs. And so that sometimes my mom, it was really more about giving to her, not getting anything. It was unconditional love. Mm-hmm. And so I would give her money or take care of clothing needs or things like that. Mm-hmm. And so I did that for about 1.5 years. And then one day she called me up. I need a pair of shoes. Could you get me a pair of shoes? And by that time, guess what? I had forgiven my mom for everything that had happened when I was a child. God was showing me that time was short, because before I could get the shoes to her, I had a call from her caregiver who said, Lisa, I'm sorry, but your mom has had a massive heart attack and she's in a coma at the hospital. They don't expect her to get through it. Mm-hmm. So that last week of my mom's life, I was by her side and I was stroking her hair and I was telling her how much I loved her. And when she did pass, I made sure those shoes were on her feet. And it's just like we read in the Bible, it says, God says, love your enemies. And he also says we're to love all, love others as I have loved you. Mm-hmm. And that means we love even the unlovable. And for many years, I felt like my mom was not lovable because she wasn't loving me in the way that I wanted her to love me. It wasn't until I forgave my mom, and I don't know if anyone who's listening has struggled with unforgiveness, but really it wasn't until I forgave my mother that he could use me in any form of ministry. So then, of course, we can talk about that, but he led me into serving other women through our ministry, Pearls of Promise, that helps women overcome. Women maybe like my mom, who have really had just a bump in the road. Something terrible has happened and they just have not been able to get out of it. We tried to help them.
What a wonderful story. I enjoyed every minute of that story. But you know what? I really want to talk about, like, when the door closed for you on your dream, did you feel as though God pushed you back?
Well, what I didn't tell you guys is that I ended up going back to television, which I never thought I'd do. When I left television in 1999, I just felt like that season was over, and I believe that God pulled me out of it after 19 years because he needed to train me, first of all, and I also needed to be available to be able to do ministry, because I could only commit to Sunday morning Sunday school, teaching Sunday school. He had me in the school zone after I rededicated my life to Christ, and so I learned right along with the kids. But he wanted me to eat some solid food. And so, but he had a goal and a plan for me to go into ministry. And eventually, even though it seemed like the television dream died, because it was a rough last year, I felt like I was too old and all that kind of stuff. Well, he brought me back into television. It was just repeat messages. I want you to do this. And people would come up to me and say, why aren't you doing television, Lisa? And I said, well, I'm too old. I've done that. I don't need to do that. But then he started parading older women in front of me that had television shows. It was just crazy. All the different reminders. I could not I could not negate what he was doing and how he was just putting it in front of me all the time. I'm also a part of an organization called Christian Women in Media. It's an international organization. I'm in leadership with that. And so the leader of that organization kept encouraging me to do television. So I thought, okay, I'll do this. And I created a show, an interview show kind of like this, but we're topical. And I shot the first few on my phone. And I mean, very humble beginnings. The first one, I didn't have the phone right. And so we were sideways like that. I mean, I had to learn. Yeah. And then somebody who has a production company saw it and he goes, Lisa, let me do one of these for free for you and see what you think. Yeah. So he did. Of course, it's like driving the new car for a weekend, and then you buy it. And so my husband and I decided this was something that we wanted to put money into. And now he does the production on the show. It looks so much better. And since we've been doing that, God has brought networks to us. We're on 5 television platforms now, and we're on radio platforms. And I never dreamed, honestly, I never dreamed this would happen. I never dreamed he would bring you back. Now that's what we're doing. And so the dream died for a while, but God has brought that dream back. And don't ever underestimate the training that you've received. Whatever you've done, he may use later for his purposes and his glory.
You can find out more about Lisa and her books on pearlsofpromiseministries.com.